What is the likelihood, not only that Donald Trump, the current president, can be impeached, but that he would also be removed before January 20th?
Well, the likelihood of impeachment, that is to say the House voting out this article of impeachment, is almost 100% at this point. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that that won't happen. It won't happen even within the next hour and a half or so, something like that, as they wind down the debate. They have about 10 minutes left, so does that speak. They have a vote after that. Will take about an hour and 15 minutes. The prospect of a conviction in the Senate, which is what is required to remove him from office and ban him from running for federal office again, the likelihood of that is, I think, is quite low. Most people would estimate. They need 17 Republican senators to switch over and vote against him, and most people can't get to that number.
David, talk about the ones that have switched over. In particular, Liz Cheney taking a stand, the number 3 House Republican. Animosity growing within her party for her for this stance. But what does she signify for how Republicans are sort of at war with themselves?
Well, she signifies, first and foremost, a deep division within the Republican Party. There are some people in Washington who are saying there are actually 2 parties there now. One is Republican and one is Trump. And they are, to some extent, at war with one another. They don't agree with one another.
All right, friends, welcome back. Dr. John podcast is here. The House has repeatedly voted down impeachment efforts against Trump during his second term, even as members keep filing articles, including the only president ever impeached twice before. Each attempt gets buried before it can proceed, yet the persistence of the efforts signals that the constitutional battle over his conduct is far from settled. Despite majority voter support at near Watergate levels, every impeachment attempt against Trump keeps getting tabled and killed in the House. The disconnect between public will and congressional action reveals that the real story isn't the accusations themselves, but the political machinery that's blocking accountability no matter what the polls say. This is the part that makes people lose their minds, because on the surface, it does not add up at all. If a majority of the country is on board and members of Congress keep filing these articles, and the guy has already been impeached twice before.
And Liz Cheney, of course, the daughter of the former vice president, made a decided break. She also signifies sort of sending a message to other Republicans that it's okay, that you don't need to be too afraid of Donald Trump anymore as he leaves office, and you can say what you really think.
So what are the true and largest implications here? Say President Trump is hypothetically impeached for a second time. What does this actually change, considering inauguration is just a couple of days away?
Well, I mean, it changes things for Donald Trump, and it may well change things for the Republican Party. It was reported, at least, that Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, was, if anything, sort of open to the possibility of a conviction, not just impeachment, a conviction, because he said that will put him out of the party once and for all, and he's gone. But your question, though, more broadly is, what is the Biden administration going to be able to do or not do, and how is that going to be affected by whether there are impeachment proceedings going forward or not? The President-elect Biden comes in with a pandemic. We have to remember, we still have a COVID-19 pandemic that needs to be addressed, a lot of issues with our economy, and he has a full agenda he wants to pursue, and the question is, what's the best way to get that done? He's very concerned, I think, about this getting in the way of that.
Then how in the world does the vote keep dying every single time? That right there is the story that almost everybody gets wrong. They see a headline that says House votes on Trump impeachment, and they assume, oh, he got impeached, it's happening, here we go. The opposite, they voted to make it go away, to kill it, to bury it so deep that nobody would ever have to deal with it again. And the reason why is honestly kind of infuriating once you finally understand it, because it's not about the strength of the evidence or the seriousness of the accusations. It's about math, cold, calculating, boring, old political math that has nothing to do with right and wrong and everything to do with who controls the room. So let me break this whole thing down for you piece by piece, nice and simple, no confusing legal mumbo jumbo, no talking heads yelling over each other on cable news, just the real stuff. What actually happened, why it keeps happening, and who is really pulling the strings behind the scenes.
So if a Senate trial does actually happen then, do you expect that that would actually cause problems, not only in just him getting it done, but in creating, I guess, that message of unity that he seems to be pushing, that a lot of people say he wants to sort of wrap his arms around?
You know, it's funny you say that, Romaine, because if you listen to this debate, as I've been listening through the afternoon, that's basically the back and forth that's happening. You're having the Democrats all saying, we must do something. This is outrageous. This was an attempt at insurrection that the president really fomented. And you have the Republicans saying, wait a second, you're the ones who are talking about getting together and being bipartisan, being united. We need to be united right now. And what you're doing is going to divide us more. So that is exactly the debate that really is going back and forth. I haven't heard anybody defend what President Trump did.
Meanwhile, House Majority Leader is closing for the Democrats at the moment, David. So we're almost at the end of this particular round of debates. But the debate within corporate America right now, yet more and more names, Cisco, the latest, Nike as well, coming out not wanting to support particularly lawmakers who seem to have been trying to vote against what the election told us. But how do you think this has put so many corporate leaders in a bind?
Because here's the thing that nobody bothers to tell you. Impeachment is not one big dramatic moment where everybody points and the president gets dragged out of the building. That's the movie version. That's fantasy. That's what people imagine when they think about constitutional accountability. The real version is way messier, way more political, and way more about coded backroom math than it is about principle or justice. And once you see how that math actually works, you're going to understand exactly why this keeps playing out the same way over and over. It's almost predictable once you know the trick. And look, whether you love the guy or you can't stand the sight of him, this affects you, all of you. This is about how much power one single person in that office is allowed to have. It's about whether Congress can even check a president anymore, or whether that whole idea is basically dead on arrival, a constitutional relic from a time when the founders actually believed that the legislative branch would have the courage to enforce its own authority.
The showdown in Washington, the articles of impeachment against President Trump go to the full House with a vote expected this week. David Wright updates us from the White House. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning, Eva. Get ready for big drama wrapped up in lots of parliamentary procedure as the House of Representatives takes up the impeachment of President Trump. The Judiciary Committee has approved 2 articles of impeachment, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Now, the debate. We'll hear from members on both sides. It is likely to be bitterly partisan. But there's little mystery about the outcome of the vote when they finally do vote, most likely on Wednesday. Democrats are in the driver's seat for this part of the process, but Republicans do hope to chip away at Democratic unity, targeting members from districts where Trump support is strong. There are 31 of them. 2 of them have already said they'll vote no on one or both articles of impeachment. And Congressman Jeff Vandrew of New Jersey is expected to quit the Democratic Party and cross the aisle to the Republicans dramatically sometime this week.
That is not a small thing. That is the entire ballgame. The thing the founders were sweating over 250 years ago when they designed a system of checks and balances that they hoped would survive the inevitable ambitions of future power seekers. Let's rewind and actually walk through what's been going on, because this is where it gets juicy, and this is exactly where most folks get the story completely backwards. Trump comes into his second term, and it does not take long, like not long at all, before somebody in Congress says the I word out loud. That somebody is a Democrat from Texas named Al Green, and this guy has been beating the impeachment drum for years. He is not new to this. He was doing it back in the first term too, so he's kind of the guy who just will not let it go ever.
Over in the Senate, Republicans have the majority. They set the rules. Senator Mitch McConnell has said that the Republicans will be in total coordination with the White House in the Senate trial that follows, most likely in the new year. The Constitution requires a 2/3 majority to remove a president, so the ground is much more favorable to President Trump over in the Senate. Dan?
David Wright from the White House, thank you very much. For much more on this, let's bring in our chief anchor, George Stephanopoulos, who will be hosting this week later this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
So, David Wright was just saying there's really no mystery about what's going to happen on Wednesday in the House. And then we go to the Senate, where the conventional wisdom is that the president will be acquitted. Are the outcomes, I've checked in with you on this throughout the process, so I'm going to ask you this again. Are the outcomes really preordained in both the House and the Senate here?
Seems like it right now. I mean, I think the Democrats say they're not whipping, they're not counting the votes, but they're pretty confident that even though they may lose a handful of Democrats in the vote this week in the House, they will pass the impeachment articles, the 2 articles.
And pretty early on, Green forces the issue over something that genuinely shocked a lot of people. Trump ordered U.S. strikes on nuclear sites in Iran without going to Congress first. Now, whatever you think about Iran, there is this thing in the Constitution called the War Powers Clause. And it basically says Congress is supposed to be the one that decides on war, not one guy acting alone. So Green stands up and says, hold on, you cannot take 300 million people to war without even asking us. And he files articles of impeachment over it. Now, here's where you got to pay real close attention, because this is the exact part everybody gets wrong. Green forces a vote, and the House votes overwhelmingly to table it. Now, to table something is just a fancy Washington word for kill kill it, set it aside, make it disappear. So the vote was not to impeach Trump. The vote was to not even deal with it at all. And get this, a bunch of Democrats voted with the Republicans to make the whole thing vanish. Only a small group stood with Green. Let that sink in for a second. Democrats voting to kill a Democrat's own impeachment push. Wild, right? So that's the first attempt, and you think, okay, that has got to be the end of it, but nope. Green comes right back around for round two. This time, the articles are about something a little different and honestly a little darker. We're talking about Trump's rhetoric this time, his threat stuff aimed straight at lawmakers and at federal judges. There was language floating around about going after members of Congress, about threatening judges who ruled against him. So Green files brand new articles and he forces another floor vote. And here's the thing that's actually a huge deal. The support jumped big time. The first time only a small group stood with him. The second time that number climbed dramatically. That is a massive increase in about 6 months. That is not nothing, folks. That is a wave building. That's the tide coming in. But there is always a but. The vote still fails. It gets tabled again. So Trump is still not impeached. And here's the part that made a whole lot of people on the left absolutely furious. A significant number of Democrats voted present. Now, what does present even mean? It means I'm here, but I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no. It is the political version of shrugging your shoulders and staring down at your shoes, a dodge plain and simple. And who did the dodging? A bunch of the top Democratic leaders, the people at the very top of the party. Some of the biggest names you will recognize instantly. They did not vote to impeach. They did not vote to save Trump either. They just hit present. Some of them literally switched their votes to present at the very last second, right before the clock ran out. Come on, you got the leadership of an entire political party and their big brave move is to vote present. This is the thing I really need you to understand because it is the beating heart of this whole story. The reason these impeachment votes keep dying is not because the country does not want it. Remember those poll numbers, Watergate territory? The reason they keep dying is politics, cold, calculated, boring old politics. See, here's the math. To impeach a president, you need a simple majority in the House, and right now Republicans control the House. So the second any impeachment vote comes up, the Republican majority can just table it and it's dead, done, buried every single time. It's automatic. But then why are Democrats voting to kill it too? Why all the present games? Well, a lot of Democratic leaders think forcing these votes right now is just bad strategy. They think it makes their party look like it only cares about impeachment, not about prices, not about jobs, not about normal everyday stuff that regular families actually care about. So here's their thinking. They want to win the midterm elections first. Their whole plan is beat him at the ballot box. Don't hand him a free talking point. So when Green forces a vote that they know they cannot win anyway, a lot of them get annoyed and they vote present just to duck the whole mess entirely. So now you've got this crazy split inside one party. On one side, you've got members like Green saying somebody has to stand up, somebody has to be on the record even if we lose. On the other side, you've got leadership saying you are forcing us into a losing vote and making us all look bad, so knock it off. That tension right there, that is the real story, not Congress impeached Trump. The real headline is Congress is at war with itself over whether to even try. And it just kept escalating from there because Trump kept being Trump. He kept giving them fresh reasons. Fast forward now to when there's a war going on with Iran, a real one, and Trump posts some stuff on his social media that pours straight gasoline on the fire. He writes that a whole civilization would die that night if Iran did not back down. He threatens to blow up power plants and bridges. And people look at that, a lot of people, and they go, wait, is a sitting president openly threatening to wipe out an entire civilization? And that is when things exploded all over again. More than 85 members of Congress, House and Senate combined, called for either impeachment or for removing him using the 25th Amendment. Now, the 25th Amendment is the thing where the cabinet can declare a president unfit and boot him out. A congressman named John Larson from Connecticut filed a fresh impeachment resolution, and he straight up called on the cabinet to invoke that 25th Amendment. He said the guy was becoming more unstable by the day. And here's the kicker. Even some folks on the far right chimed in about removal too. When you've got both ends of the spectrum saying the same thing, yeah, that is genuinely unusual. So now you've got a whole pile of these resolutions stacking up, different members, different reasons. Some are about the war powers thing, some are about the threats to judges and lawmakers, some are about actions overseas, the deployments, the strikes, all of it. There are so many of these things floating around Congress right now that it is honestly hard to keep track of them all. And they keep getting tabled or they just sit in a committee somewhere and never move an inch. And this is what most people completely miss. It is not that nobody is trying, people are trying constantly, non-stop. It is that the system itself is built so that the party in charge of the House can slam the door shut every single time. So the trying and then the failing, that is the whole rhythm of this story over and over and over again. Now let me throw one more thing at you because this part really shows you where all of this is heading. Over 1 million Americans have signed a petition to impeach and remove Trump. 1 million. And that polling I mentioned earlier, one survey found overwhelming majorities of Democrats support impeaching him, a majority of independents, and even a significant chunk of Republicans. Read that last one again, 1 in 5 Republicans. That is not a fringe thing anymore, folks. That is mainstream. That is a sign that something fundamental is shifting in the American political landscape. So here's exactly where we stand. You've got a country that, by the raw numbers, is more on board with impeaching this president than it has been for almost anyone in modern history. You've got a Congress that keeps filing the paperwork over and over, and you've got a giant wall of political math that keeps knocking every last bit of it right back down. That is the tension, that is the drama, and every single piece of it is real, no exaggeration needed. And I know exactly what you're thinking right now. So does that mean it's over? Does that mean nothing ever actually happens? Is this just going to be votes dying forever and ever? Nope, because the game is about to change in a big way. And that is exactly what I want to break down for you next, because there is a plan, a real one, and it has got a date stamp right on it. Let's clear something up once and for all because people mix it up constantly. Trump was impeached twice in his first term, once over abuse of power and blocking Congress, and once over the January 6th Capitol attack. That was the incitement of insurrection charge. Both times the Senate had a real chance to convict him and kick him out of office for good, and both times they came up short. The Senate vote was close, but you need a supermajority to convict. And so he skated both times. He walked right out the other side. But in this term, the second term, he has not been impeached. Every single attempt has been tabled on the House floor before it could go anywhere at all. So if you see somebody online screaming that Trump got impeached again and it's happening, they are wrong, full stop. What is actually happening is a whole bunch of votes to not do it. That is a massive difference. The reason it keeps failing is math, not morals. And I cannot stress this one enough. This is not about whether the accusations are strong or weak. It's not about the evidence. It is about who controls the room, period. Republicans run the House right now, and when they run the House, they get to decide what gets a real vote and what gets thrown straight in the trash. So when Green or anybody else forces one of these things, the majority just tables it and walks away whistling. And then on top of all that, you've got Democratic leaders who do not even want these votes happening right now in the first place. They think it's a trap, a setup. They would much rather talk about the economy and win some elections than get stuck in an ugly impeachment fight they already know they're going to lose. So they duck, they dodge, they vote present, and that is exactly why the vote counts keep looking so strange and lopsided. It is not that half of Washington secretly loves Trump, it's that a whole lot of them are quietly playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. The support is growing fast, and that is the part that actually matters here. Yeah, the votes keep failing, I know, but you gotta look at the trend, not just the final result. The support jumped dramatically from the first vote to the second. That is a huge increase in a short period. That's a rocket ship, folks. That is straight up. And outside of Congress, it is even bigger. 1 million people signed a petition. A majority of voters in poll after poll after poll say they would back it. One analysis literally compared the numbers to Nixon at the absolute peak of Watergate. And even a significant minority of Republicans are now saying, yeah, maybe I could get behind that. And here's the thing about momentum. When a movement is growing that fast, the people blocking it start to sweat. They start to feel it because momentum is a funny thing. It builds slow, 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 and then all at once like a dam breaking. And here's the big one to watch, the day one plan. A whole group of Democrats are already right now today quietly building the case to impeach Trump the very moment they take back the House. They are basically calling it a day one move, as in the very first day, they are back in charge, boom, impeachment right on the table. Some of them are flat out saying they cannot wait until January to start. They have to build the case now. So they are running shadow hearings. They are fact-checking everything. They are lining up all the evidence in a neat little row, getting everything ready so the second they've got the majority, they do not waste a single minute. One of them even said that if Democrats win the House, the push for impeachment is going to be overwhelming. That was the word, overwhelming. So think about what that actually means. The midterm elections coming up are not just about who controls Congress. They are about whether that impeachment door swings wide open. If Democrats win the House, the entire math flips overnight. Suddenly the party that has been tabling all these votes becomes the party running the whole show. And that day, one plan goes from a daydream to a very real threat. Why does all of this even matter? Who actually benefits here? Here's the truth. Impeachment is one of the only real checks that Congress has on a president. It is the emergency brake, the big red lever. And what this whole saga shows you is that the emergency brake only works if the right people are actually willing to pull it. And right now, the people holding it are choosing not to pull it. Maybe they think the case is not strong enough. Maybe they are just playing politics. Maybe it's a little of both. But either way, the result is exactly the same. The brake just sits there untouched, collecting dust. And who benefits from that? Well, obviously Trump does. Every tabled vote is a straight up win for him. He gets to point right at it and say, see, they tried and they failed. It's all a big witch hunt. And every present vote from a nervous Democrat, that is a gift to him too, because it makes the other side look weak, divided, scared of their own shadow. Come on, you can see it. But who is frustrated in all of this? A whole lot of regular everyday people. That million-signature petition. Those are folks who feel like they are screaming straight into a void. They are watching a president do things they think are way, way over the line. They are watching the polls back them up completely. And then they are watching Washington just shrug and look away. That is a recipe for a whole lot of anger. And anger like that, it does not just disappear into thin air. It shows up somewhere, and usually it shows up at the ballot box. So what comes next? Two things. Keep your eyes locked on both of them. Number one, watch the midterms. That is the whole game. If the House flips, everything you just learned in this video changes completely. The party that has been killing these votes becomes the party that could finally run one. And that day, one plan stops being talk. Number two, watch what Trump does, because every single one of these impeachment pushes came right after something he did. The Iran strikes, the threats to the judges, the post about wiping out a civilization. He keeps handing them fresh materials. So the real question is not whether there will be another impeachment attempt. Of course there will be. The question is whether one of them ever actually sticks. And that all comes down to one thing: who is counting the votes? Impeachment attempts have all been killed, but public support is climbing toward Watergate levels, and a day one plan awaits if Democrats win. The real crisis isn't whether Trump gets impeached, it's whether impeachment itself still means anything when the Senate refuses to convict, leaving the constitutional system strained beyond what the founders ever imagined. The repeated failure of impeachment efforts signals a deeper breakdown in the constitutional balance. When the majority sees impeachable conduct but Congress won't act, the system itself is at risk. Whether the damage can be repaired will determine the shape of American democracy for generations.